The first time I found out I was pregnant was really exciting. It happened pretty quickly once my partner and I decided that that was going to be part of the next phase of our lives. And I remember going to his baseball game, and one of his best friends also plays on his baseball team. And this friend's wife also came. So she and I were sitting together on a blanket, and I couldn't help myself. We'd always talked for 10 years about one day we're going to have kids the same age, and it's going to be so cool to watch them grow up. And I said, I have to share this with you. It's really early, but I'm pregnant. And she said, so am I. And so, I said, what's your estimated due date? And she told me, and it was about a week before mine. We were like right on the exact same timeline. We were so excited. About a week later, I started spotting. And, when you Google what to do when you're pregnant, you start spotting, it tells you to go to Emerge. So I did. I'd never been pregnant before. I didn't really know any better. I would not react the same way now. But I did. I went to Emerge, and they were so kind to me there. I went to a smaller hospital than the one that's actually closer to me in hopes that I wouldn't have to wait in the waiting room for a long time. And they were so kind to me. They did a blood draw to test my HCG. They did an ultrasound. And what they found was that I was having a miscarriage. They called it a chemical pregnancy. Because it was so early on, which meant that technically there was not a baby. There was a pregnancy, but not a baby. Or a being that would someday be a baby. So I then had to follow one of my really good friends' pregnancies on the exact same timeline that mine would have been, which was interesting. I really intentionally had to make a choice at that time whether I was going to let myself feel really triggered when hard feelings came up around that. And what I chose to do in a really intentional way, it took a lot of work, I don't mean to make it sound easy, is I decided to celebrate what was going on for her and to just remind myself this is not about me. Even though what's going on for me is hard and is real, and she was so loving and compassionate to me throughout her pregnancy. But we were still able to celebrate together, and that felt really good. Her son was actually born on what would have been my due date. So it came really full circle for me, and I love this kid. I celebrate him all the time. For who he is, and also because it meant that, it was a reminder of what might have been for me too. That was the first one. The second one happened about 6 months later. I got to about 10 weeks and thought that I had a UTI. So again, I went to Emerge, and they did a whole bunch of tests, and they said, you have what's called a blighted ovum. You are miscarrying again. So they told me to go home and see if it would pass. It didn't really. I went for some follow-up testing, and they said, no, there's still a pregnancy that's not viable. So I got what is called the abortion pill. It's got a medical name as well, but a lot of people know it as the abortion pill, or medical abortion. And I took that pill. I was not prepared for what was going to happen after that, emotionally or physically at all. I sent my partner off to work the day that I took it, and expected some cramping, as I'd been told that I would. And it was far more intense than that. When I went for follow-up tests after that, they said, nope, there's still tissue being retained there. Let's do another round. So I did another round, which, when you're grieving the loss of what you would expected to be a viable pregnancy, that's really hard emotionally. And then to feel so unsupported and unprepared by the medical community that I was dealing with was also really hard for me, especially because I'd been through so much with my mom while she was going through cancer. that's hard for me. I went for some follow-up testing after the second round of the medical abortion medication, and there was still retained tissue. So I ended up with an emergency DNC, which is a surgical abortion. And that was right before Christmas. My dad came and made me soup and walked my dog while my partner worked as much as he could until he couldn't anymore. And he came home with a bottle of whiskey. And, that was hard. And then my third miscarriage was another technically a chemical pregnancy. So another really early miscarriage. So it was 3 losses within less than a year. And I always had this dream of becoming a mother and that potentially being part of healing from grieving my own mother's death. And for a while, it felt like it was never going to happen. To say it was devastating, I don't think even does a service to how incredibly, deeply, darkly hard that was for me. But the month after my third miscarriage, I found out I was pregnant again. And I now have a healthy 2.5-year-old boy.